Watch this.
The possibility of making museums and libraries liable for kids getting their hands on harmful material has made a lot of librarians worry about their jobs or how they would do it if House Bill 666 becomes law. Meanwhile, the debate over gender reassignment surgery for Idaho's kids.
This is a mental illness that needs to be treated. I think we can all agree on that.
We sit around here and we call ourselves pro-life in this body, but if this bill passes, that will most certainly not be true.
We hear from one trans woman who says she worries about Idaho's trans youth should this bill pass. We've certainly learned the benefits of spacing during the pandemic. Now the city of Boise is considering expanding on that idea by possibly letting some parties spill into the street. Well, Idaho's 2-year state of emergency has become a state of existence for a lot of us. Well, that's about to end. Governor Little announcing today, almost 2 years to the day after he declared it the first time, COVID-19 public health emergency will come to a close on April 15th. Declaring the emergency and keeping it in place this long allowed Idaho access to federal funds for things like medical supplies and paying for things like the National Guard helping with the hospitals. The governor's office says FEMA covered about $257 million in costs since March of 2020. Money that would have come out of Idaho's own pocket. Since the pandemic started, more than 4,800 Idahoans have died from the coronavirus.
I would rather my 6-year-old grandson start smoking cigarettes tomorrow than get a view of this stuff one time at the public library or anywhere else.
Wow, that's how offended some of Idaho's lawmakers were to an informational folder Representative Guyanne DeMordaunt handed out to illustrate House Bill 666. Representative Bruce Skog would rather his kindergarten grandson start on a lifetime quest for lung cancer than for him to spend one moment looking at the book excerpts and pictures in that packet. Being offended is the basis for House Bill 666, the one that would remove the exemption for public and school libraries, universities, and museums from being prosecuted for disseminating material harmful to minors. DeMordaunt said for years, as a parent, she's been concerned about obscene and pornographic materials that have found their way into our school and public libraries.
Well, I believe that this is happening inadvertently. The increasing frequency of exposure of our children to obscene and pornographic material in places that I, as a parent, consider safe and assume are free from these kinds of harmful materials is alarming.
She added, she should expect a level of vigilance in protecting our children from such things. And those vigilantes should be librarians. She even said libraries don't have to follow federal obscenity laws established in 1973 with the Miller v. California Supreme Court case. It deemed the distribution of obscene materials not covered by the First Amendment. And it created the Miller test, a 3-pronged guide for determining what is obscene. 1, it takes into account community standards. 2, a patently offensive description of sexual conduct. And 3, whether it lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. All of those criteria could be considered subjective, obviously. However, libraries do consider the Miller test when deciding what books and materials to put on their shelves. Libraries have boards made up of community members. For example, the Ada County Community Library has a 5-member board who set policies that guide everything from behavior in the library to the selection of those materials. The criteria for selection include demand, literary quality, if it fits a need, those kind of things. And the staff applies that criteria to nearly every one of their nearly 200,000 items. But again, there's a bit of a wiggle room there when it comes to criteria, like what is objectively obscene? That part of HB 666, of course, came into question during yesterday's debate.
I'm curious because as I look at this, you know, one of the books that came to mind was a youth classic. I think it's Judy Blume's Forever, which I think is actually how I learned what I knew at the age about male sexuality, and it depicts a teenage boy who has erections and masturbates and wet dreams, and it's kind of intended actually for a younger audience to introduce these concepts. I am curious whether that would run afoul, because it seems to fall explicitly under some of these categories in terms of overtly describing sexual excitement, masturbation, etc.
Mr. Speaker.
Is that your understanding?
Mr. Speaker, would you put the House at ease?
Yep.
Immediately, Representative Brent Crane asked for a recess to lay the ground rules on what language can be used when discussing this bill. And to Rebel's point, who was citing Idaho code, by the way, when she was gavelled, if that language is deemed too offensive, how can a librarian be expected to decide what is or isn't obscene? Where is that objective line? Now, to clarify, Representative DeMordaunt made a point of pointing out the word knowingly in Idaho code, meaning in order to be held accountable, a library has to knowingly give or make available said obscene material. Now, knowingly is a high bar. And what about this term disseminate? Even that is a questionable term, according to the director of the Ada County Community Library. One of the many questions we asked on how this bill would change local libraries.
You know, it's funny, I was thinking of that myself. The idea of the term disseminate means spread widely. We don't disseminate anything, we make things available. And we make them available for personal choice and family choice. And so, yes, that itself is a little disconcerting that they're considering us disseminating.
Yeah. So to say, though, that there are no obscene materials in a library, would that be an accurate statement?
Well, we're totally aware of the Supreme Court and the Miller test, and so by that definition, we would avoid obscenity.
But there are books that are questionable or gray area.
Or that someone, subjectively would find something that they're not interested in, and they would not want anyone in their family to be reading. But again, it's a personal decision.
Is this a problem? Are libraries checking out books or materials to minors that would be considered obscene or damaging?
We certainly do not see it that way. We understand that there may be people in the community who find an individual item, again, objectionable for their own values and their family values, but we do not see that being a problem. And we have had people come to us. We have in this selection policy, part of it is a reconsideration process, and we have a form. People can fill out the form and talk to us about an item in the collection, and we'll explain the reviews, the reason it was added to the collection. We will evaluate it again, and sometimes it's possible that an item in the children's collection gets moved to the teen or a teen to adult, but in most cases we have not found this to be a problem at all.
I mean, the book 50 Shades of Grey is an adult book, obviously. Mm-hmm. But if a kid picked that book up and walked up to the desk and said, I want to check this out, how would a librarian handle that?
Right, so in the library, when you become a card holder, your library card provides you access to all the materials in the library. And so if a minor would come out and check out a book that was shelved, intended for the adult collection, the staff may engage in, is there some other materials we can help you with? But we may not, even, because we can't really judge why that child might be checking that. They may be checking it out for their grandmother or mother or aunt, who knows, and it's not really our place to make a decision about that. We do not act in loco parentis. We do not act as parents. We trust that the parents will talk to their child. They might, if they see that their child checked something like that out and it was not given to an adult, they may hopefully use that as a teachable moment to talk to their child about what kinds of books they would prefer that they actually check out.
Librarians aren't parents, but this law might make you act as one.
Exactly. And it would be almost impossible for us to look at our collection of almost 200,000 items and determine what an individual might find objectionable, because it is so different. My fear is that it would become a chilling effect, that we would question every potential item that we would put on the shelf, and that would be impossible.
Mary said one of her biggest concerns would be a librarian or everyone in the library being charged and subject to a fine or even jail time. Would the librarian be on the hook, or the entire library, which is covered by taxpayer funds, by the way? Representative DeMordaunt was tied up today at the State House, understandably, so we couldn't ask her those questions. By the way, those books, though, listed in Representative DeMordaunt's packet, other than the puberty book, they would all be considered and contained in the adult section in local libraries. We did make a couple of random searches to see if any of them were carried in school libraries, and we did find a few, but those were listed as adult or young adult interest level. The bottom line for librarians: what role and responsibility should parents play in deciding what is acceptable for their kids to check out of the library? They say if you have a concern with what is in your local library, get involved locally, but not with a state law. Another controversial bill on the House floor this morning, House Bill 675, and it would prohibit gender confirmation medical treatment for anyone under the age of 18. Not only would the bill ban affirmation surgery, it would also ban puberty blockers and hormone treatments that are used to assist in gender transitions. Even if a parent were to give this consent, providing these medications and/or procedures in Idaho, it would be considered child abuse and a felony. Here's Katya Stepovic.
This bill is about protecting children, which is a legitimate state interest. We need to stop sterilizing and mutilating children under the age of 18. This bill is not about adults or adult trans community at all. This is about children.
According to Representative Bruce Skog, author of House Bill 675, in 2019, the legislature unanimously passed Idaho Code 18-1506B, outlawing genital mutilation of a female child and imposing a felony penalty. And today, he's asking that that bill be amended to include boys and girls.
If we do not allow minors to get tattoos, smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, or sign legal contracts, why would we allow them to make decisions to cut away healthy organs based on their feelings during puberty time? That's wrong. They're not ready for that. The vast majority of gender-confused children, if allowed to go through puberty, outgrow the problem and accept their bodies over time.
But for those that don't come to accept their bodies,
allowing puberty to run its course changes the body in profound and irreversible ways. Let's say you're doing a male to female transition. Whether you do that transition when you're 5'7", or whether you do it when you're 6'3" with giant broad shoulders and an Adam's apple, is really going to impact you for the next 70 years of your life in how successful that transition is.
Take it from Bree Latimer, a Boise State student who knew her true identity from a very early age.
I mean, how old were you when you knew that you were a woman? That's how old I was, too.
She says hormone replacements and puberty blockers changed her life for the better.
Once you go through therapy, you figure out all these different things about yourself, things finally start making sense in hindsight, and then taking that step to starting hormone replacement therapy or puberty blockers. At that point, I feel like you are more sure of your identity than you ever have been in your entire life. I was suffering from anxiety, depression, and starting HRT, it's like, it was like, it just kind of got turned off.
She says it's important to listen to youth transgenders before it's too late.
And when they bring that to their parents and their therapists and their doctors saying, I know who I am now and I want to pursue this path, that's when we really need to listen to them. Because a lot of the times, those kids aren't going to make it to the age of 18 if that's the choice that they want to make.
How do you mean?
They're going to take their own lives, most likely.
We sit around here and we call ourselves pro-life in this body, but if this bill passes, that will most certainly not be true, because a yes vote will be a noose around the neck of kids who want to live, but not like this.
But some lawmakers think this bill could save the youth and their parents from making a decision that they could regret down the road.
So parents don't always make the perfect decisions on behalf of their kids, and this would have been one of those cases. I wouldn't recommend having this kind of a decision. It's a terrible thing to have to go through, and I have a lot of empathy for the families, but at the same time, I also want to express I don't feel kids are cognitively ready to make those kind of decisions.
Now, there are exceptions in this bill that include rare cases of birth defects or chromosomal disorders. But again, those are, well, rare. Those found responsible for violating this bill, if passed, would face a felony charge and can face up to life in prison. Brian.
All right. Well, it's quite the range in the testimony we've heard over the last couple days when it comes to these bills, because as we were talking about, Katya, if this goes forward, a parent who chooses to help their child identify could be charged with child abuse, right? In a state where a parent can choose to marry off their kid at the age of 16 or choose to not seek life-saving medical treatment for their kid based on religion. Here we have Idaho. Block parties in downtown Boise isn't a new idea, but we could see more of them, and that could keep customers happy and businesses full. That's coming up in about 90 seconds, but right now, we want to hear from you. Text us with your thoughts on the show, 208-321-5614. No thoughts? How about story ideas or jokes? Don't forget to keep them clean and include your name and the hashtag #the208. COVID protocols are dropping, states of emergency are ending, getting back to normal is getting closer. So are the community events we've had to miss over the past 2 years. Well, tonight, Boise City Council will consider allowing some city-permitted events to have open container zones in large areas called festival blocks. What are they? How would it work? And why now? Joe Paris has those answers.
With eyes open to promoting vibrant and exciting events in Idaho's capital city, the city of Boise is considering a new city code that would allow alcohol open container zones during special events. Right now, customers really aren't allowed to take alcohol from a restaurant out of a business. The city knows that as the area grows, so will the need and want for major events in already popular locations.
A lot of the places that we see events are things like the Bass Block, 8th Street. There's certainly the potential for areas like Bodo as well. But we do see events on Capitol Boulevard and other areas that may lead or may not lead to great places to continually have such events and again, maintain the vibrancy of the downtown area.
Jamie Heingerling is deputy city clerk for the city of Boise. She says that under the proposed idea, the city could approve applications to allow for open containers during special events. The ordinance creates a mechanism for alcohol licensed businesses to be designated as a festival block within the city.
So essentially that allows the flow of alcohol from alcohol licensed businesses out into that special event area.
If an area is approved as a festival block, hypothetically, events like Hyaldi at the Basque Center in Boise could opt in and allow nearby restaurants and bars in the designated event space to allow customers to buy a drink and then head back into the festival event on the street. To be clear, this would only be for specific events.
It is not an open container 24/7. However, it would allow special event organizers to conduct their events within these blocks. And if they so choose, they could allow for open container during their approved special event.
Festival block areas and events need to be approved by the city. A few hundred friends couldn't just show up in an area and throw an impromptu block party. To be approved, a business with an alcohol license needs to apply and get at least 75% of the businesses and residents on their block to agree with the idea of designating the area as a festival block. The festival block designation is good for 1 year at a time. It does need to be renewed. The city says that the idea isn't just for large-scale events.
Smaller events, if they would like, can also opt into the benefits of a special event, which would include operating with open container on a designated festival block.
The city worked with stakeholders in the area to create a plan that considers safety while also promoting the success of businesses that find themselves near major events.
We just wanted to be creative in the ways that we could promote that, as well as the overall vibrancy in downtown, and support our businesses as well as support our events that we see in the area.
All right, she made it clear there, Joe, it's not 24/7 open container downtown, but is it festival time all the time?
No, it's only festival time when the city approves a special event. It could be a large event, it could be a smaller event. The idea here is that we all know in the downtown area of Boise and maybe some other parts of Boise, there are pretty common spots for events, like as we highlighted in the story, the Basque Center. Of course, we have San Ignacio, and of course, every 5 years, Hyaldi. So in an area like that, if it's declared a festival zone and city council and everyone approves everything, then, for example, you could have restaurants giving people drinks. They could go back out into the street and they could mix and mingle, and you would have all the vendors on the outside of the event itself also benefiting from this. Brian, I really think this is an idea from the city of Boise as we move not past COVID. COVID's still with us very much, but as things change and open up a little bit more, this is something that we're going to see. And talking with the city of Boise earlier today, they say with the announcement last week, and then effective on Monday, the city of Boise's mask policy, specifically at events, has gone away. They're starting to get a lot of applications for major events, and it's interesting to think, if we think pre-COVID, so early 2020, 2019, think about how big the city has grown since then, and now that we're kind of opening the gates again, how big some of these big festivals and events in Boise could be.
Just to clarify, bike bars still a no-go, right?
Well, you can have the bike bars. There's no alcohol allowed on the bike bars.
So it's just a bike then?
Just a bike, and there's a big bar, I guess.
Thanks,
Put
Joe.
your arms on it. Thanks, Brian.
All right, lots of comments sent in tonight. I wish we could show them all, but we only have a certain amount of time here at the end of the show. This one from Patty. When did freedom-loving Idaho lawmakers become the doctor, psychologist, and moral judges for all the taxpayers in the state? When do they go home? They're trying to get out of here by the end of the month, Patty. Thank you for always showing the harsh reality of Idaho. We live in a society that say they are pro-life, yet don't care what happens to the child as long as it's born. Our legislature will fight for parents' rights to not make their child wear a simple mask to school, but again, not fight for that same parent to allow their child to transition to a life they were born to live. Shame on you, says Jesse. Another comment, our local library has a self-checkout kiosk. How could this be monitored for offensive for some materials? Chris from Twin Falls asked, that's a good question. I guess the next step would then be to just get that book off the shelf and maybe outright ban it from the library. I don't know how you'd monitor that. The state representative should worry more about what children are looking at on their phones than what is seen in a book. Really? How many kids read books anymore? Asked JT. My kids do. They also have phones, and I'm well aware of what is available in both, and that is a very good point. Festival events. Sounds obscene, says Todd. It's a good point. I guess that all depends on what festival it is. Only the good ones, maybe? I don't know. But that's the point. It all is determined by who thinks something is obscene. That festival could be. I don't know. Maybe not. Let's go find one and find out. We'll see you tomorrow.